Hey everybody, Silverpaw Reads here, doing another chapter of Spike. Hopefully my microphone's a little bit better now. I'm back to using my blue snowball. I apologize though if my voice is kind of weird, if I have to clear my throat some. I think I have got some allergies going on right now, so let's get on with it. The treehouse looked the same way it always had looked, unfinished. The ladder up to the treehouse consisted of a number of planks nailed to a large tree, making it rather difficult to get up. At least for Sam. Spike, of course, didn't have any problem at all. Being the tree climber he was, he could have done perfectly fine without the ladder. Wow, this brings back memories, Sam said, and looked around at the dusty old items and toys that lay scattered around. Spike nodded and picked up a wooden sword. He clearly remembered the play fights they'd had and when they'd pretend to be pirates. Sam's grandfather was a sailor, and Saunders had told him a lot of stories about his adventures at sea. Stories of old Gramps fighting pirates, something which Spike believed to be nothing but fiction, but still found to be beyond exciting to listen to. So after the story time with Saunders, they run into their treehouse, play pretend it was a big ship, and that they were pirates. Those were the best of times. Spike put down the swords and joined Sam, who sat on this little supposed-to-be a porch that they'd built back in the days. "The view is great from up here, don't you think?" Sam said. "Sure is," Spike said, and watched the horizon. Sam looked at him and then chuckled a little. "Dude, what's the deal with watching the view if you can't see anything?" Spike looked at Sam. "What do you mean, can't see anything?" "Your hair, it's covering your eyes," Sam said. "Why, it always does." "Well, yeah, but how can you see anything through it?" "I look down or straight forward," Spike replied short. Sam had no good answer to this, but he wanted to give Spike a better eye view so he could, too, admire the whole landscape. Therefore, he reached out his hands and tried to move Spike's hair away from in front of his eyes. "This'll help, you'll see," he smiled. "Hey, leave it be," Spike said. "I know you're shy, but you don't need to hide your pretty face from me, your best bud," Sam persisted. "It ain't pretty." "That's just your opinion," Sam smiled friendly. He now leaned over Spike, who was leaning back to avoid Sam's hands. The sunlight shone through the trees and hit Spike's face. Sam had managed to carefully withdraw his hair from covering his face, and now that he got to see it clearly, he noticed something he'd never noticed before. "Spike!" Sam exclaimed, his surprised eyes staring into Spike's puzzled ones. "What?" Spike asked, wanting to hide his face completely. "Finally realized how ugly I am?" "No, not at all. Stupid, but... oh, man," Sam kept on. "Then what?" "You've got green eyes." A broad smile appeared on Sam's enlightened face. "I always thought they were black." Spike tried to look away, but Sam leaned over him so close that he couldn't hide his face away, and then he said embarrassingly and lightly ashamed, "Yeah, I know, it's weird and unusual, but damn it, Sam, stop staring." "What do you mean, weird and unusual? I wasn't supposed to have green eyes because I was told both my parents had blue ones. But please, Sam, I don't like you staring at me like that." "But your eyes are so beautiful," Sam said, dazzled. Spike's eyes widened in surprised expression. You think so?" Sam smiled. "Yeah, they're the prettiest eyes I've ever seen." Spike began to blush a little and had to look away. Sam continued, "Most green eyes I've seen have been, you know, sharp yellowish green, but your eyes are a dark, deep green with a slight hint of blue. Wow, just wow. I guess your hair must have shaded for the light to enter so they looked black, but now the sun shines into them, I finally see they're actually dark green." Spike cleared his throat. "Dude," he began, "I appreciate the compliments, but seriously, this is getting kinda gay," he said before he pushed Sam away from him. His uncle had always complained about Spike's ugly eye color, so he didn't know whether or not to be happy about Sam saying his eyes were beautiful or if he should even believe Sam. "Actually," he began, "I'd much rather have brown eyes like the ones you have." "But brown eyes are so boring," Sam complained. "All my relatives and a whole army of other people have them." "I think brown eyes are way nicer than blue or green ones." "Oh, thanks, but I think green eyes are much cooler than blue or brown ones. It's so unique." "Unique is not on a list of what I've heard about my eyes. Try horrible and green-eyed monster, if you will." "Silly," Sam smiled. "I said they're beautiful, and so be it, right? They're not they are beautiful. Just accept that as a compliment, won't you? Seriously, your eyes are awesome. They suit you perfectly." Spike looked away and didn't really know what to say other than snorting. "You want to talk about something else?" Sam asked. "Yes, please," Spike said and stroked his hand through his hair, making the bangs fall into place and cover up his eyes again. The view really was amazing, at least whatever little he could see of it. The sun was about to set, the clouds were glowing in pink, purple, and orange, and the sky was turning into a darker shade of blue. Spike was silent and thoughtful for a while, but then he decided to ask Sam a question. "Sam, do you think my mother was unfaithful?" Sam blinked twice and just looked at Spike. "What?" "I was just thinking, since both her and Dad had blue eyes, then that should make it impossible for me to get green eyes unless she had an affair with a green-eyed man, right?" How would I know? And why are you thinking like that? That's not very nice, is it? Why should it matter? They're dead. Sam tried to read Spike's expression, but it was difficult. He looked like he could be better with a touch of sadness, but it was never easy to guess what went through that boy's mind. They're not really that green, are they? Spike asked, and Ashley sounded a tad worried about it. No, or, well, only when the light shines directly into them, usually, and on a distance they look like they're black. Spike sighed in relief. Why did you ask? It's just that, well, Spike hesitated. I don't know. I guess I just don't like being green-eyed. I think it's because of all the nasty things Chuck calls me because of them. Sam felt he got angry on the inside. You shouldn't listen to things that man says, he said. But what if he's right? What if he's not? Why do you believe in the most your mean uncle or your best friend? Who do you believe in the most? Your mean uncle or your best friend? Well, you, I guess, but I can't ignore Chuck either, and he's right about many things. Spike, he convinced you that you killed your own parents. He can't be right about anything. How'd you know I didn't kill them? You were an infant. She died giving birth to me, and then my dad committed suicide. How is that not my fault, huh? He didn't even want me. Spike was silent. Sam was silent. Spike was completely brainwashed with his nonsense. This wasn't the first time Sam had tried to talk him out of it, and always the same response. Spike getting sad and angry at himself for the crime he'd supposedly committed, and angry at Sam for bringing it up, though this time it had been Spike who brought it up. Look, I'm sorry, Sam said, but my opinion is that your uncle is bringing you way down without you even deserving it. Think about it, Spike. You don't deserve to be treated like shit. Spike didn't reply, didn't even look at Sam. He just sighed deeply and watched the sun set. A long 30 minutes had passed and it was beginning to get dark. Sam said it was time for them to go home. Dad says not to stay out after dark, so we better get going. He's probably right about that, Spike said and followed Sam as he climbed down the tree. Hey, Spike, do you want to spend the night at our house? I'm pretty sure it's okay with Dad. Thanks, but I better get going. Chuck also tells me not to stay out too long. You can borrow our phone and call him? Sorry, but I have to go, Spike said, and the look on his face revealed that he'd much rather have spent the night at Sam's house. Oh, it's okay, Sam said a little down. I understand. Maybe some other time? Definitely, Spike said and jerked a hopeful little smile. Sam smiled also. Soon he looked up in the sky, which was now pitch black except for the stars and crescent moon, and the forest didn't look too inviting either, full of eerie dark shadows playing among the trees. I can follow you home if you want, Spike then said, almost as he had been reading Sam's mind. Will you? Oh, thanks, man. Sam smiled, wanting to give Spike a manly hug, but knew better than to actually do it. Spike had stopped stopped hitting Sam if he touched him. Now he just sort of froze, stiffened up in a defensive posture, but he didn't hit anymore, at least not his close ones. It took about 15 minutes to walk home to the Saunders residence, which was a cozy and old little white villa, at least in the daylight. Now, if it hadn't been for the warm lights in the windows, it would have looked more like a ghost house. Spike said goodbye to Sam and began walking home hesitantly. He was already late and knew that the consequence for being late was a good beating, or maybe he was in the mood for... Spike shuddered to think of it, but it was possible that Chuck had a certain desire tonight. It had been almost a week since the last time. It was the longest pause from him that Spike can remember having, at least in the past 2 years. When he was a little kid, Chuck did it once, then waited for almost a month before the next round. Then after he did it Spike once a week, then it increased for over the years, and for one short period after Spike had reached his puberty, Chuck would do it twice a day. It was a living nightmare, mildly spoken. But this sudden, almost a week-long pause worried Spike. He, of course, was relieved and happy that it had been long since the last time, but what worried him was maybe that he'd been given a long break because something worse was about to happen. Like 3 times a day, or even 5, or maybe he was going to be locked down in the basement again because maybe he was about to find out tonight. It was soon too dark for him to see the ground anymore. The forest was so thick in the trees, and with trees that the moonlight failed to shine through. Luckily, Spike had walked this road so many times he no longer needed lights to find his way home. Home. He didn't feel that it was an appropriate word because that house had never felt like a home to him. The only place he ever felt in his heart was home would have to be the Saunders house. He's finally out of the forest and stood not too far from his small shack-looking house. Spike had neighbors. You could spot a few houses further away from their own house, and behind those again lay a small village in which old, retired people had settled down, and no one had any idea what was going on in the Schaefer house. Spike Schaefer and Charles J. Schaefer's old dusty house at the very end of the little village. No one visited them, no one talked to them, no one even walked past them. Spike doubted they even knew anyone lived in the house. Chuck always kept the curtains closed and had very little lights on, so it was kind of hard to tell anyone lived there. Spike took a deep breath and knocked at the door 3 times before he opened it. His hand was shivering on the knob. Uncle Chuck? He called out. I'm home. No one came to greet him. All he was met by was a grumpy voice that said, I can hear that, idiot. Why are you so late? Spike walked a short way towards the living room where Chuck sat and replied, I'm sorry, sir. Chuck just glared at him from the couch, then suddenly his voice got milder and put away his bottle of beer. Here, sit down, boy, Chuck said and gave the seat next to him a few pats. Spike didn't want to sit next to his uncle, but he dared not disobey his order, so he slowly walked over to the couch and sat down. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine as Chuck laid an arm around his shoulders. Say, Spike, we never talk. How are you? Spike was mildly shocked by this sudden kindness, but he figured it would only have to be the booze that caused it. He couldn't possibly be feeling remorse for the things he'd done or try to bond with Spike. This was clearly just pep talk leading to something else entirely. I'm okay, Spike lied. Chuck started laughing. Are you now? Spike swallowed anxiously. Well, that's glad to hear, my boy. Chuck laughed again and then slowly let his arm slip down to Spike's thigh. Well, you see, he continued, I myself am not feeling okay, and I think that's your fault, kiddo. Spike was concentrating real hard not to show he was shivering, and he didn't know what or even if to reply. Chuck had started carefully stroking his hand up Spike's thigh and closer to his genital region, but then Spike did a toss with his body as if he was trying to jump out of the couch. However, Chuck grabbed his arm and pulled him down out of the seat again. There was no escaping this. Now, Spike, calm down. Chuck grinned. We're just going to have some fun, aren't we? Here, have a beer. Chuck forced Spike to drink the remaining beer from one of the bottles. Spike coughed at the unfamiliar and nasty taste. This was the first time that Chuck had ever let Spike get near his beer, and Spike hoped it would be the last time as he didn't like the taste one bit. There you go, Chuck said and laughed. Wasn't so bad, was it? Spike choked again and wiped his mouth. Chuck just sat there staring at him, not touching him this time, just staring. Spike tried to avoid his stare. At the same time, he'd kept an eye on his uncle to read his next move. Chuck stared at him for what seemed like over 5 minutes, then he leaned forward and grabbed Spike's head. Spike tried to turn away, but he couldn't avoid the kiss the old man forced on him. He felt like throwing up, but knew better than to actually do it, or he'd get beaten up so badly he'd be staying in bed for the next couple of days. Then it was finally over. Chuck looked at him softly at him. Spike looked horrified back. Then Chuck got angry and struck him. Why do you always act as if this is something horrible, huh? Can't you just let me enjoy this for once? God damn it! Sorry, sir. Spike stuttered with teeth, grit, and pain. Chuck had hit him really hard in the face with the back of his hand and it hurt badly. Sorry, sir, my ass! Chuck snorted, then stood up from the couch, grabbed Spike by the arm, and dragged him with him. I'm getting the blindfold. I'm sick of those eyes of yours. Where are you taking me? Spike dared, asking, ignoring the insult. His uncle just laughed. Where do you think I'm taking you? He grinned. Spike instantly guessed the basement, but it looked more like he was being led towards one of the bedrooms. His own. If Spike had feared tonight, it was going to happen again. Spike got tossed down into his own bed and his uncle leaning on top of him. Chuck fetched the blindfold he'd gotten from his own room out of one of his pockets, told Spike to close his eyes, and then tied it onto him. There we go. Now I don't have to see your ugly eyes no more, Chuck said, satisfied. Soon he began carefully stroking Spike's torso under his t-shirt before he ordered Spike to take the shirt off. Then he leaned down and licked him from his belly button and up to his chest. Spike desperately tried to think of something else, anything to take his mind off the nausea he felt from what Chuck was doing to him. Then Chuck let his hands down to Spike's belt, wanting to take it off too. That's when Spike suddenly grabbed Chuck's hands. Because of the blindfold, Spike never got to see the shocked expression in Chuck's face. Shocked that Spike was rude enough to actually try and stop what he was doing. Please don't do this, Spike begged. Please, I don't want to. Chuck blinked twice and he burst into a loud laugh. What the hell are you saying, kid? Don't want to? Yeah, I can tell you don't want to when you're this close to getting a hard-on. I'm not, was all Spike could say before he was silenced by Chuck's hands grabbing his throat. Chuck leaned forward and hissed into Spike's ear. Look, kid, I don't care about what you want, get it? What you say doesn't mean shit to me. We're gonna do this and you're gonna lay completely still or I go get the ropes. You hear me? Now try to fucking enjoy this. Your reluctance is only making it worse. Enjoy it? How the hell could anyone enjoy being raped by one's nasty old uncle? How could anyone enjoy being raped at all? Chuck slipped Spike's jeans off, then his boxers. Spike took a deep breath, held it, then exhaled slowly and repeated it. He tried to focus on his breathing to calm himself down, but it wasn't easy. He suddenly felt a rush throughout his body as Chuck put it into his mouth, but it was by far not a good rush that went through him. The body was reacting the way it would, but the brain wasn't following. It was as though his body, like his uncle, tried to force him to enjoy it, but his mind was strongly disagreeing, and together they created an unnamed and complex feeling he just couldn't understand and didn't know how to deal with. He tried to focus on his breathing again, but he failed at breathing slowly, and instead began breathing faster. Then the final strongest rush flew through his body, and it was over. For a short while, anyhow. Chuck wiped his mouth and grinned satisfied. Then he leaned over Spike to whisper in his ear once more. Your turn.